Greetings. You have landed at Words Move Poetry. I am Boddie, and once again it is a pleasure for me to be leaning in with you on the subject of poetry this rather brisk November Sunday. This week's video takes off from a conversation that Andrew Sorkin had with two accomplished women, Megan Markle and Mellody Hobson. Mellody Hobson is the co-CEO of Ariel Investments, one of the largest minority-owned financial investment firms in the United States. And of course, Megan Markle, we know that she was an actress, and she is now Duchess of Sussex, and she is also the co-founder of Archwell. So both ladies come with boardroom background. One of the themes that they discussed in their conversation with Andrew Sorkin is the question of how women are perceived in the workplace, in society, and their lived experience was quite interesting to listen to, because there they were, these two accomplished women whose experience with being called or being regarded as ambitious made me think about what society considers ambition in women to be and why. So I wanted to enter that exploration, the exploration of what society considers to be ambitious women and why, from the point of view of poetry, because we are talking poetry. And I was reminded of a poem that I learned as a child. I was 8 years old or so, maybe 7 or 8 years old, when I first learned the poem The Glove and the Lions. It was in the primary reading book, the regulatory reading book that was used in my primary school. It was reproduced within that book, The Glove and the Lion, written by an 18th century poet, Leigh. And the poem is a very visual, vivid, narrative poem in which a king gathers with his courtiers to enjoy the kingly sport, the sport of kings, which was watching lions fight in a pit. And of course, that is a dangerous sport, but I suppose that was one of the things that made it so exciting for kings then. At that time, surely we didn't think about cruelty to animals and so on. And the king gathered his lords and their ladies together to enjoy this sport. According to the poem itself, it describes the king as a hearty king. He was hearty. King Francis was a hearty king and loved his royal sport. So there they were, enjoying their sport, maybe on a Sunday like this, and the lions started to go at each other, and of course blood and so forth, blood and gore was all around, and King Francis sought to assure everyone that it's better that they were in the spots that they were in, rather than any closer to the dangerous pit. And this one noble woman, she wanted to attract the love of her life, and she decided, well, she'll throw her glove into the pit and ask him to retrieve it for her. And he did so. He was rather gallant about it, jumped into the pit and retrieved it. But He then threw the glove, according to the poem, but not with love, right in the lady's face. And his act was approved by King Francis, who said, "By heavens," said Francis, "rightly done," and rose from where he sat. "Not love," quoth he, "but vanity sets love a task like that." So he rebuked the woman for what he termed her vanity, but he was incapable of seeing his own vanity. He was the king who had clothed himself in the vanity of the imperial kings of Rome. At that time he was king of England, but he had taken the cue from the kings of Rome, and in their time they had gladiators fighting to the death. I suppose it was somewhat of an improvement, Francis having lions fight against each other. But the point is that the narrator of the poem associated vanity with the woman and not with King Francis. And as we know, we have inherited a culture where very often vanity is associated with women. Women are seen to be vain, and this is something that women, even in the 21st century, struggle with. Similarly, they struggle with the the label of ambitious women, even though we have women in the boardroom like Miss Markle, like Miss Hobson. Women are often criticized if they are viewed as overly ambitious. We see very often Miss Markle, for instance, being excoriated for her ambition and for a multitude of other sins. So you see, we cannot escape the old meanings of words. We apply old meanings to contemporary situations. And this, of course, does not bode well for equity and equitable treatment of women in the society. And both women spoke eloquently on this question of the disadvantage, the great disadvantage of being regarded as overly ambitious if they were to push in the way that men are expected to push to get ahead, to succeed. They weren't speaking as victims, because surely neither of them is a victim. They are accomplished women, and it was good to hear them speak as accomplished women, speaking on behalf of the average woman. They not only spoke of the language which minimizes women in the workplace, but they also talked about the question of women's worth, the parity of pay and benefits that that women suffer under, because they are not given the same parity as men. Their work is not given the same parity as men. And we'll discuss that issue next week. But I wanted to discuss this whole question of language in context. Language is not benign. It comes with it comes with meanings from a certain context, and very often that context is outdated. The idea that women cannot be as ambitious as men, even that construction that I just said, women not being as ambitious as men, that in itself is an issue where we talk about, for instance, when we are being well-meaning and we are talking about, for instance, young girls being as good in a sport as boys, or as being as good in a certain subject, maybe math or science, as boys. That in itself shows that the standard is for the excellence to be the excellence of boys in those activities, and that women being secondary can perhaps reach that standard. So we need to look at these things when we try to find our poetic power. We need to command words that invite us to discover our powerful poetic selves, even if we have to make words. I know, for instance, in a poem that I wrote, Mujer, and I'll put the link in the description below. I'll also put the link to the conversation that Andrew Sorkin had with the two women that I'm speaking of in the description below. When I wrote Mujer, I said, language that misses me compels a fast. I meant that if language does not see me, I refuse to see myself in that language, and I will stay away from that language, and I will have to create language that sees me. The dub poets, for instance, the dub poets coming out of Jamaica have been very successful at that. They have not been successful in rising above all of the challenges in finding a language that represents who they are, that allows them to see who they are, that allows them to navigate the world as sovereign beings. But they have been quite brave in meeting the challenge towards getting there. So I wanted to have a look at this issue, the issue of the concepts, beliefs, and values that give meaning to words, and I wanted to place on the table the need for us to find new ways to express ourselves, so that as women, as people, as sovereign beings, we are able to truly discover ourselves, to see ourselves in the language. So please drop your comments in the comment section below. Like and subscribe, share, and let me know what your thoughts are on this point. You do have a wonderful week ahead, and I wish you power in your poetry. Peace out.